In light of our industry expanding as we go forward, the expansion of the Temeri International Airport, the extension of the runway, the imminent oil gas industry, and also the expansion of our domestic aviation sector. The Civil Aviation Authority, looking at all these things and the challenges which lies ahead, realize that the economy of Guyana is on an exploding path. We therefore decided to engineer a study as to the impact of aviation over the past year, 2 years, what it is now, so that we can set a benchmark for future studies, knowing exactly where aviation stands in the whole economic realm and the part it plays. As you know, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, we are responsible for safety and security of our traveling public, but we are also involved in the economic side. In our department, you have the Department of Air Transport Management, and they deal with economic regulations. Thus, we should know exactly what the aviation industry is doing when it comes to the economy. We engineered a study and we contracted Oxford Economics. A quick background on Oxford Economics. It's a company which was founded in 1981 as a commercial venture with Oxford University Business College to provide economic forecasts and modeling to the UK companies and financial institutions. Since then, they have become one of the world's foremost independent global advisory firms and provided reports, forecasts, and analytical tools on 200 countries, over 100 industrial sectors, and over 3,000 cities. Their headquarters in Oxford, England, with regional centers in London, New York, Singapore. And Oxford Economics also has offices in various other cities such as Belfast, Chicago, Philadelphia, etc. They have over 250 full-time employees, which include more than 150 professional economists. And I can go on and on about Oxford Economics. They are key advisors to corporate and financial and government institutions. This is just to let you know the strength of the company we contracted to undertake this study. They completed it and presented it to us in draft form for us to look at. We had a discussion with the industry on the impact study, and they have also completed, this is Oxford Economics, also completed their final draft. What is very significant in their executive summary is the first sentence of their brief, which says the economic impact of the aviation sector in Guyana is substantial. And why is it substantial? Because it forms as much as 3.2% of the gross domestic product and provides jobs for over 12,000 individuals. So we'll be using this baseline study, or this study as the baseline, as we move ahead into the more challenging times with an exploding economy. And we'll be able to rate aviation and the impact it has on this economy in a better way as we move ahead. You can understand why aviation is so important to Guyana. The economic future of Guyana and the vibrancy of the aviation sector are linked. They're like Siamese twins. The future growth of Guyana would not be able to expand and if we do not have the aviation sector in place. As such, the Civil Aviation Authority is moving ahead with making and building ourselves into a robust oversight authority. Capacity building has started. Training for our staff began since the latter part of last year, and even though they were being trained before, but there's some intensity and determinedness when it comes to the training. We are looking forward in the near future to having our own headquarters because Guyana needs aviation. We will ensure that the traveling public is safe. Aviation have got to be safe and secure in order for Guyana to experience the growth it has to achieve and to experience what lies ahead with all the industries expanding. So, ladies and gentlemen, in another 2 to 3 years, we'll be conducting another study, and as I said, using this one as the baseline, so we would be able to see exactly what what part aviation plays in the lives of each and every Guyanese.
The economic impact in GDP has to do with jobs and labor income of air operations, and the spending by foreign tourists, the vast amount of tourists that arrive by air, were calculated using a standard input-output economic impact framework. And I am not the expert on the model, but Oxford Economics, they are the expert, and they have used the input-output table provided by the Bureau of Statistics to come up with the calculation. In terms of the model structure that they've used, it's a very standard structure in assessing impact. They assess first the direct impact of the sector. That has to do with direct employment and spending by the industry's business operations. They look at the indirect impact, that is the supply chain effects stemming from industry's operations. For example, as a result of investing in the airport, GPL will benefit because they provide electricity. The telephone company will benefit because they provide communication. Legal services is necessary. So the indirect impact are those supply chain services. The gas companies will benefit as well. The induced impact has to do with the impact resulting from employees. When you would have earned working in aviation, you would go and support the retail sector. For example, you will shop on Regent Street, you will visit Giftland, and you will support the retailers. So in terms of modeling the impacts, they looked at the direct impact, those who are directly employed within the sector, those indirect impacts as a result of investment in the sector, the supply chain services, and the induced impact. As you can see from the diagram, it's summarized there. What are the direct impacts? It is the people directly employed in the aviation industry plus profits of aviation companies. Should let you know that in this calculation, it only looked at domestic investment, investment by Guyanese. And so it didn't look at the foreign investment because GDP has to do with nationals of Guyana. What are the investment made in Guyana? The indirect impact is summarized here as a supply chain, vendors that support airports and aviation carriers. And the induced impact, which is the consumer spending resulting from the wages and income earned from the sector. Together you have the total impact as they measure it, value added employment income, which is basically contribution to GDP. As I've indicated earlier, the tables were obtained from the Guyana Bureau of Statistics, the data, to construct this model. And the employment data, the baseline, was collected from the 2012 census, also conducted by the Bureau of Statistics. So what exactly is the economic impact of aviation operations in Guyana? Looking at the study which covered the two main airports and the domestic airlines in Guyana, such as Trans-Guyana, Domestic Airways at the time, Wings Aviation, Air Services Limited, and JAGS Aviation. The study excluded secondary airdromes such as Letem and all the hinterland airdromes because somehow it is related back to the operations at the two main airports. But apart from that, the data was not readily available for those external airdromes outside of OGLE and CGIA. Employment in terms of impact, they have broken it down just as if you look at a GDP compilation from the Bank of Guyana, you will see that it covers several sectors. So they have worked out the impact of aviation on those sectors in terms of what jobs are created. So directly in trade, transport, and communication, 900 jobs are created. In terms of the other sectors, indirect jobs, you have a total of 2,010 jobs. They've made these estimations based on the data supplied by the operators and the airports. An overall impact in terms of job, when you combine the direct employment, the indirect employment, and the induced, you have a total of 3,490 persons employed within the sector, or at least affected by the sector. In terms of dollar value, they've quantified in billions. The direct impact on the sectors, it's 1.6 billion. The indirect impact, which is significant, it's 3.8 billion. And the induced impact, it's 1.3 billion. Altogether, $6.8 billion. The labor income, they have worked out an estimate of this as well, and it's overall $3.3 billion in labor income created as a result of the sector. This gives you a more graphical understanding of the information I just presented in terms of employment, labor income, and the gross value added impact of GDP. Practically in Guyana, all foreigners come by air. They travel by air. Substantial amount of the tourists to Guyana, they travel by air. Some estimated 80% or in excess of 80% of the tourists or travelers, they come to Guyana by air. Every foreigner, of course, they spend money. They spend money in the economy, and this was captured in the study as part of the 3.2% impact on GDP that was presented by the Director General earlier. They've also quantified the impact of tax revenue provided by the sector. Some estimated $2 billion in revenue annually. In terms of what a foreigner spends, they've estimated a summary of $25 per night per visitor. So every visitor that comes to the country, they spend an average $25 per night. What they did to come up with that figure was to find an average of all the travelers. Now, some people, when they travel, they come for business, and that spending may be maybe $160 per night spending. But then you have a large percentage of visitors come back for friends and family at Christmas, Easter, MASH, and other selective periods within the year, such as the July-August period. When they smooth the curve out with the business visitors or the business travelers, along with the visiting friends and family figure, they came up with an average of $25 per night. And that works out to spending $23 billion in terms of what tourists and visitors, foreign visitors, bring to the economy. Now, it tells you how important the aviation sector is right away, because without the sector providing connectivity, you could not have had those visitors coming, or at least the impact would not have been so significant. So they have concluded that foreign tourism is significantly affected by the aviation sector. That sector, as they've estimated, provide the tourism sector some 8,550 jobs. And those jobs are impacted by the aviation sector. So they have estimated also that out of this $23 billion estimate that they've given to us, that at least roughly $13.8 billion in impact on the economy. This again is a graphical representation of the information, and I'm sure Mr. Reed will make available to you some of this information in the press briefing. So the overall impact of the sector, both tourism and air operations, it's 12,000 jobs, as the Director General had indicated, 12,040 jobs they've estimated, and roughly $20 billion of contribution to GDP. And that works out to roughly 3.2% of GDP overall. And safely they can say, based on the data that they've analyzed, that 1 in every 20 jobs in Guyana is as a result of the aviation sector. In terms of where those jobs are spread, the most significant area is within the hotel and restaurant industry, the trade and transport and communication sector, and finance, real estate, and commerce or business. They're responsible for some 70% almost of the contribution for jobs. In terms of impact by sector, as you can see, the trade and transport and communication, and also the hotel and restaurant industry, again, they're significantly affected by the sector. 29% of the impact by sector is as a result of the trade and transport and communication sector. Connectivity benefits. Beyond the operational and tourism impacts, aviation plays an indispensable role connecting Guyana, both internally, within regions, and to the global economy. We cannot emphasize how important this connectivity is, for without air transport or air link, we would not be able to connect with the rest of the world. And domestically, without air transportation, a great part of the hinterland region will not be connected to coastline.